Nihon Kendo Kata is a series of exercises which brings together the techniques of Kendo, in which bamboo swords are used, and of sword fighting using real swords. Nihon Kendo Kata is performed by the Uchidachi, who initiates the action, and by the Shidachi, whose role it is to follow. There are 7 stroke forms for the long sword, or tachi, and 3 stroke forms for the short sword, or kodachi. Each stroke form is designed so that the Shidachi wins by employing the technique of Sensen no Sen, or Go no Sen, against an attack from the Uchidachi. Sensen no Sen anticipates, while Go no Sen responds, but both are faster than the attack. Practicing the stroke forms of Nihon Kendo Kata develops correct Kendo techniques through the study of etiquette and techniques. Let's view each stroke form of Nihon Kendo Kata. The Uchidachi leads the way to the Zare position prior to Tachiai. Zare should ideally be performed in the center of the Shimoza. The back should be straight and both hands on the floor when performing Zare. After Zare, the Uchidachi proceeds straight to the Tachiai position. The Shidachi proceeds to the Tachiai position after leaving the Kodachi at the edge of the practice area. Once in the Tachiai position, they perform Rei to the Kamiza, and then exchange Rei with each other. They insert their swords in the waistband on their left hips with their left thumbs on the tsuba. Using Ayumiyashi, each takes 3 steps forward, leading with the right foot. They draw swords and take the Sonkyo position with the Kensen crossing. They stand up and assume the Ai Chudan posture. Lowering the Kensen, they step backwards to the Tachiai position. Using Ayumiyashi and leading with the left foot, they take 5 small steps, then assume Chudan no Kamae. Tachi no Kata, Ipponme, the first form of the Tachi strokes. Both approach in the Ai Jodan posture. The Shidachi parries a frontal men strike and counters with a frontal men strike in return, then adopts Zanshin in the Hidari Jodan posture. Nihonme, the second stroke form. Both approach in the Ai Chudan posture. The Shidachi parries a Kote strike and counters with a Kote strike, then adopts Zanshin with Kigurai. Sanbonme, the third stroke form. Both approach in the Ai Gedan posture. The Uchidachi's tsuki thrust from the Chudan position is parried and countered with a tsuki thrust in return. The Shidachi proceeds to Kuraizume and adopts Zanshin. Yonhonme, the fourth stroke form. The Shidachi adopts the Wakigamaya posture in response to Hasso. The swords are brought in an overhead sweep and crossed. The Shidachi's tsuki thrust from the Chudan position is parried and countered with a frontal men strike, then Zanshin with Kigurai. Gohonme, the fifth stroke form. The Shidachi approaches in the Chudan posture in response to Jodan. He parries with an upward sliding motion and counters with a frontal men strike, then steps back and adopts Zanshin. Both take 3 steps back to the original position in the Ai Chudan posture. Ropponme, the sixth stroke form. The shidachi approaches in the gedan posture in response to chudan, raises his sword to chudan, parries a kote strike with a small upward sliding motion, and counters with a small kote strike, then adopts zanshin. Nanahonme, the seventh stroke form. Both approach in the I chudan posture. The shidachi checks a tsuki thrust, then, avoiding a frontal men strike from the chudan posture, passes to the side and delivers a strike to the right do, then adopts zanshin in the wakigamae posture. That completes the practice of the stroke forms with the tachi. Both adopt the sonkyo posture, sheathe their swords, return to the tachi-ai position, and perform ritsure. The shidachi steps back and exchanges his long sword for the kodachi, while the uchidachi waits in the sonkyo posture. Both exchange there. They insert their swords in the waistband and take 3 paces forward. They draw swords and cross the kensen in the correct posture. Stand up and take 5 steps back. Kodachi no kata, ipponme, the first form of the kodachi strokes. The shidachi approaches in the chudan hanmi posture in response to jodan. He parries a frontal men strike and counters with a frontal men strike in return, then adopts zanshin. Nihonme, the second stroke form. The approach is in the chudan hanmi posture in response to gedan. As the uchidachi makes a frontal men strike from the wakigamae posture, it's parried to the right and countered with a men strike in return. The shidachi restrains the uchidachi's arm and adopts zanshin. Sambonme, the third stroke form. The shidachi approaches in the gedan hanmi posture in response to chudan. He parries a men strike by sliding his sword first up and then down, then brushes off a do strike and pushes the uchidachi back, controlling his attack with the left hand and habaki, then adopts zanshin. That completes the practice of the kodachi stroke forms. The swords are sheathed in the sonkyo posture. Both return to the tachi-ai position and exchange rei. After rei to the kamiza, the shidachi goes back to retrieve his tachi. And then returns to the original zare position. Both perform zare before leaving. As before, the uchidachi goes first. Now let's explain the various kamae or postures used when practicing the stroke forms. Chudan no kamae. The right foot is placed slightly forward. The left fist is tensed with a squeezing motion and held about one closed fist away from the navel. The base of the left thumb should be at navel height. The kensen should be at throat level and directed to a point between the opponent's eyes or at his left eye. Morote hidari jodan. From the Chudan no Kamae posture, step forward with the left foot and maintaining equal balance on both feet, raise the sword overhead. The left fist should be at an angle to the upper part of the forehead and about one closed fist away. The sword should be at a 45-degree angle to the body. Direct the kensen to a point slightly to the right of the seichusen. Morote migi jodan. The sword should be raised above the head from the Chudan no Kamae posture, without the kensen deviating from the seichusen. The left fist should be at an angle to the upper part of the forehead, and about one closed fist away from it. Again, the sword should be at a 45-degree angle to the body. Gedan no Kamae. From the Chudan no Kamae posture, the kensen should be lowered to a height 4 or 5 centimeters below the opponent's knees. Hasso no Kamae. From the Chudan no Kamae posture, step forward with the left foot and bring the sword up over the right shoulder in a large sweeping movement. The blade should be pointing at the opponent and be at a 45-degree angle to the body. Both fists should be down towards the shoulder, but in the same relationship to each other as for hidari jodan. The tsuba should be at mouth level and about one closed fist away from it. The left fist should be roughly on the seichusen. Wakigamae. From the Chudan posture, step back with the right foot and move the sword in a large sweep to the right side of the body. The kensen should point backwards, with the blade pointing down diagonally to the right. The kensen should be slightly lower than gedan, so that the sword is out of the opponent's sight. Let's take a look at etiquette. The uchidachi always enters and leaves first. Zare is performed before and after tachiai in the center of the shimoza at a distance of roughly 3 paces. They should be performed in the correct manner with a straight back and by placing both hands on the floor. This is how the shidachi holds both swords. The kodachi goes between the thumb and first finger. Then the tachi is placed between the first finger and the remaining 3 fingers. The tachi and kodachi should be parallel to each other. It's quite permissible to use the left hand to support both swords for careful handling. This is how the sword should be laid down. They should be parallel to the right side of the body, with the blades pointing in towards the body. The kodachi is placed inside the tachi, and the tsuba should not overlap. The tsuba should be in line with both knees. The uchidachi goes straight to the tachiai position. The shidachi first goes to a position about 5 paces to the right and to the rear of the tachiai position. Then, facing the shimoza, kneels and places the kodachi on the floor, parallel to his body, and with the blade facing inwards. Finally, he proceeds to the tachiai position. Dei towards the kamiza is performed by bowing at an angle of about 30 degrees. When exchanging Dei, eye contact should be maintained, and the bow at an angle of about 15 degrees. Let's watch the movement from Taito to Kamae. On the left is a real sword, and on the right is a wooden sword. To release the Kamae, lower the Kensen to the height of Gedan and open it away from the body. Point the blade to the lower left. This is not the way to do it. The blade is too far to the side of the body. Let's now take a look at each stroke form in detail. Ipponme, the first stroke form. This is the correct way for the uchidachi to strike. He strikes in a large motion, as if cutting the tsuka of the shidachi, together with the shidachi himself. It's important to draw the left foot up behind the right foot. This is incorrect because the strike is too jerky. This is too short and weak. The left foot hasn't been drawn up behind the right one. The shidachi parries in the correct manner by stepping back and smoothly countering with a frontal men strike. Take careful note of the position of the shidachi's fists and the angle of his sword. Here the kensen has been brought back too far after the parry. This is the correct position of the hands after delivering the frontal men strike. This is the correct way to perform the first stroke form. The shidachi follows the uchidachi in adopting zanshin. Nihonme, the second stroke form. After parrying a kote strike, the shidachi attacks with a return strike to the kote. He strikes at a point slightly lower than the kote with a large sweep. Let's take a look from the other side. Note the point of striking. The kensen comes slightly below the horizontal. What's wrong here is that the kensen comes down too far, both on the upward swing and on the downward strike. The shidachi correctly parries diagonally to the left and counters with a sweeping strike to the right kote, but fails to show zanshin. Let's take another look. After parrying, the shidachi brings his kensen too far down on the overhead swing. Here the shidachi's parry is too wide, so his counter strike is delivered at an angle. What's wrong here is that the kensen is raised to face level immediately after the kote strike. Take a good look at the correct way to perform the second stroke form. Sanbonme, the third stroke form. In this technique, the approach is made in the Ai Gedan posture, and after parrying a tsuki thrust, the shidachi counterattacks with a tsuki thrust in return. Watch carefully how the uchidachi delivers his tsuki thrust, and how the shidachi parries it and controls the uchidachi with a counter thrust. This is the correct position of the kensen. Let's take a look from above. He parries the thrust, counter thrusts, advances in kuraizume, and adopts zanshin. This is how the tsuki thrust is parried. Look carefully at the position of the shidachi's hands. This is too far to the side. Here the left hand is too far to the side. This is a bad counter thrust because the tsuki thrust is repeated a second time. Watch the correct way of performing the third stroke form. Yonhonme, the fourth stroke form. The shidachi approaches in the wakigamae posture in response to hasso. Both cross swords, and as the uchidachi makes a thrust at the right chest, the shidachi parries and counters with a frontal men strike. Let's watch it again by slowing the movements down. Both take 3 small steps forward, make the correct transition to jodan, and cross swords. With the swords still crossed, they lower them to chudan. Then parrying a thrust to the right chest, the shidachi makes a frontal men strike. Let's take a look from overhead. Both cross swords straight from the jodan posture. After a correct parry, the shidachi delivers a firm frontal men strike. Here the swords are crossed from an angle, and they're too high. Now the correct way to parry. The left fist should be raised high for the parry. This is the correct way to perform the fourth stroke form. Gohonme, the fifth stroke form. The shidachi approaches in chudan in response to jodan. He parries the frontal men strike with an upward sliding movement, counter-strikes to the men, and steps back to adopt zanshin. Both take chudan and 3 steps back to the original position. Note where the shidachi's sword slides up against the uchidachi's. Here the uchidachi's strike is too shallow, and the shidachi's frontal men strike doesn't reach. Watch the correct way to perform the fifth stroke form. Ropponme, the sixth stroke form. The shidachi approaches in gedan in response to chudan, then comes up to chudan, parries a kote strike with a small upward movement, counter-strikes to the kote, and adopts zanshin. Let's take a look from the other side. Watch the uchidachi's movements carefully. Here the upward sliding movement is incorrect. There's also too much sideways movement. Let's take another look at the correct technique. Nanahonme, the seventh stroke form. The shidachi checks at tsuki thrust, then responds to a frontal men strike by passing to the side of the uchidachi and delivering a strike to his right door. Let's take a look from the other side. Watch how they maintain eye contact. They use ayumiashi to return to the original position. Let's take a look from overhead. Watch closely how the shidachi holds the thrust in check and how both move from the chudan posture. Finally, they bring their swords in a broad sweep overhead and adopt the chudan posture. This is the position of the swords when the thrust is checked. Both the thrust and checking movement are too high. Eye contact has also been lost. The shidachi's movements are incorrect. The foot movement is wrong. It should be ayumiashi. Let's watch the correct technique again. When practice of the tachi stroke forms is over, the swords are sheathed in the sonkyo posture. Then both return to the tachi-ai position and perform ritsure. The uchidachi waits in the sonkyo posture. The shidachi steps back and exchanges his tachi for the kodachi. Before beginning the kodachi stroke forms, let's look at the correct postures. This is chudan no kamae. When a real sword is used, hold all fingers straight against the kurigata. With a wooden sword, hold the left hand against the waist. This is chudan no kamae. The kensen should be at throat level. This is chudan hanmi no kamae in response to jodan. The kensen should be at mid-face level. This is chudan hanmi no kamae in response to gedan. The kensen should be at chest level. This is Gedan Hanmi no Kamae in response to Chudan. The Kensen should be 4 to 5 centimeters below knee level. When releasing the posture, the left hand is lowered. Kodachi no kata, ipponme, the first kodachi stroke form. The shidachi parries a sweeping frontal men strike by moving to the right, counterattacks with a frontal men strike of his own, takes one step back and adopts zanshin. The uchidachi uses a sweeping motion to attempt a frontal men strike. The shidachi parries by moving to the right, counterattacks with a frontal men strike, takes one step back and adopts zanshin. They adopt the ai chudan posture and return to their original positions. The uchidachi strike is too jerky, and the shidachi makes a series of mistakes. His parry is too low, the frontal men strike too shallow, and the zanshin is wrong. Let's take another look at the correct form. Nihonme, the second stroke form. The uchidachi comes under attack, shifts his posture from wakigamae to jodan, and makes a frontal men strike. Let's watch the rest of the action from the other side. The shidachi parries by moving to the left and counters with a frontal men strike of his own. This is the correct way of parrying and restraining the uchidachi's arm. This is the order of movements made by the shidachi. This is an example of how not to do it. Let's watch it in slow motion. The uchidachi's strike is at an angle. The parry is too low. The men strike is off-center. Let's watch the correct technique again. Sanbonme, the third stroke form. Watch the shidachi's movements from the other side. Watch how he uses his hands during a series of sliding techniques, up, down, sideways and inwards. Watch carefully how the swords cross during the downward and inward sliding movements. This is the wrong way to do it. The downward sliding movement is too wide. The door is too high, so he can't slide in properly. The zanshin is also wrong. Let's watch the correct way to perform the third kodachi stroke form. That completes the practice of the stroke forms. Both sheathe their swords in the Sonkyo posture. They return to the Tachi-ai position. Exchange rei. And then perform rei to the kamiza. The shidachi retrieves his tachi. And returns to the zare position. Both perform zare. When leaving, the uchidachi again takes the lead. The Kendo Kata and ordinary practice are so closely interlinked, they're like two wheels of a vehicle. Constant practice of the kata is indispensable to learning the correct techniques of Kendo.